4 days ago, this last Sunday, the Rage Against the War Machine rally took place in Washington, D.C., and it got very, very little coverage, of course, from mainstream press outlets, as was predicted, of course. But we are going to play two clips, one from before the rally and one after the rally. So first, here is a clip from Fox News, Tucker Carlson, promoting the rally, plugging the rally on his channel, the #1 rated news and talk show in its time slot.
The anniversary of the war in Ukraine is coming up next week. The United States government under Joe Biden has been funding that war. It would have ended without the Biden administration. So a massive demonstration is planned on Sunday in Washington, D.C. It starts at 12:30 p.m. at the Lincoln Memorial. Probably haven't seen this on other channels. The message is very simple. It's nonviolent. It's reasonable. It's straightforward. Stop funding the war in Ukraine.
There you go. He went on to interview our mutual friend, Tara Reid, about the anti-war rally. The rally happened, and then after the rally, we saw a segment on the left-wing network, the liberal network, MSNBC. Here's Rachel Maddow off screen, but we can hear her voice giving her take on how that event went down.
Truly random rally on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. A rally in support of Russia, I guess, given all the Russian flags. At least a rally against the U.S. supporting Ukraine in trying to stand up against the Russian invasion of their country. This was a tiny event. It was small. It was a weird assemblage of Americans. There were Proud Boys there. There were some of the white supremacist groups you'd recognize from the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville a few years ago. Also represented prominently the remains of the bizarre Lyndon LaRouche cult.
The bizarre Lyndon LaRouche cult. The bizarre Lyndon LaRouche cult. First of all, let's hear it for the Lyndon LaRouche cult. Jose Vega made a speech there. Second of all, the balls on this woman.
We're doing Rachel Maddow's job for her by confronting politicians like an actual reporter should be doing.
I just want to say, the balls on this woman to accuse anyone else of leading a cult when this woman, for 3 years straight, convinced her audience of sub-morons, highly unintelligent, brainwashed moron viewers, that Donald Trump was going to be frog marched out of the White House for collusion with the Russian state. And she continued doubling and tripling down on that after it was debunked, after the Mueller report was turned in. So how she could be accusing anyone else of being in a cult is just beyond me. It's absolutely beyond me. But this is how fucking stupid her viewers are. And this is the main point that I want to make when we finish this clip here. But let's just let this play.
With Russian flags, also the occasional flag of the former Soviet Union. Also, at least one person who guest hosts for Tucker Carlson on the Fox News channel was there as a featured speaker.
Yeah, like 4 former presidential candidates.
Vaccine
She's on
conspiracy
Fox News. All the buzzwords. Proud Boys, white supremacists, Fox News.
It was a really weird group.
Everything to set off the fear bell.
And a weird one. But that's what it looks like. That's the assemblage of short straws and split ends and loose
short straws and split ends. Unlike your fucking imbecile
is in the right in this war, and America
loose electrons.
Side, as he keeps invading other countries.
You know, loose electrons have quite a bit of energy. I don't know if any of you tried splitting a few, but
I have to play this piece again.
Split ends and loose change and loose electrons. That's advocating in this country that Russia's in the right in this war and America should be on Putin's side
is not what
as he keeps
advocating.
Invading other countries.
That's not
as he keeps invading other countries. So far, he's only invaded
Americans
one.
Who turned out as part of this small event this weekend, but it's not like they represent a big constituency that is arguing for this pro-Russia point of view.
All right, now look. The point that I want to make here, and the Libertarian Party of, I believe, North Carolina put out a tweet that I thought was spot on. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's essentially what my point was after I saw that. Her segment on that is exactly the segment you would have seen on Fox News circa 2002, 2003.
Yes.
Word
yes.
for word. Just swap the
during
countries
the
out,
Iraq
obviously.
War, absolutely.
Everybody here is a Saddam sympathizer. They're terrorist sympathizers. They think, you know, the Taliban has a rightful claim to Afghanistan. It literally, you could sub out the specifics. It would be the exact narrative. The exact narrative.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
all these liberals who remember the Bush supporters being as brainwashed as they were back then, they are that now. It is the same exact audience, just with a shoe on a different foot.
Oz LaFay from More Media on my show last night, filling in for Colin, brought a ton of historical context for this as well, with just the anti-war movement in general, talked about the Gulf of Tonkin and you know, us lying us into pretty much every war for the last like eon. But the fact that like no one asked like, there were veterans in the street. No one asked what they did in Vietnam, or like, you know, but because of Tulsi's engagements and stuff, that's, you know, war criminal behavior, or, you know, it's like, I'm gonna show up for who's the quote? I show up for things I'm for, but with no one I'm against.
It's just crazy, and this kind of is going to come up again when we get into the Rowling thing. You know, you were talking about how they covered the 90s and how much the religious right were the people trying to ban things. It's just everything has just gone topsy-turvy, flipped around. I'm ready for Tucker Carlson to break out a guitar and start, how many times must the cannonballs fly? It's just,
how many times must the cannonballs fly? He'll say that in his voice. With how many times? How many times?
Hard rains are gonna fall
before they're forever banned. Why aren't they banned yet? They're not banned at this point.
That's a good question. But they're not going to tell you in Washington. We asked Joe Biden, but he didn't have an answer.
The answer, my friend, blowing in the wind.
Blowing in the wind.
We'll be back after this.
I would love to see Dylan doing the news, you know.
Exactly.
And here's right out of Ukraine with like.
It's like you consider yourself an heir to the tradition of the left, and you don't see the irony that you are the one mocking and denigrating the anti-war. Like, you know, the history of the right wing calling people unpatriotic for being anti-war.
Yes.
Like, you don't see, like Rachel Maddow,
the Democrats would never.
She doesn't give a fuck. Like, she wants her money. She's on her money.
They're nice.
And that's all she.
So nice.
That's all she seems to care about.
No, it's amazing. I mean, MSNBC is beyond being the liberal network. They still are in some senses and on some segments, but they are the neocon network. They are now the neocon Republican network.
It's MSDHS. It's the Department of Homeland Security. They got Jay Johnson, and they got the head of the CIA. They got John Brennan. And they got the FBI guys. It's really the cops and the feds, and it's literally the CIA and the intel infiltration of the corporate media. And it's really funny that you say this, because I got fired up. We've been talking since this rally. You know, again, what is the problem? And it's narratives like this that are being put out to the normies, to the main quote unquote mainstream. I even hate the word mainstream, because it's not mainstream. It's a narrative that's being sold by corporate networks that make billions of dollars off us. The mainstream people don't really accept this. They accept it because it's drilled into them and drummed into them day after day after day. And then it just becomes accepted thought. And this is what they figured out, you know. So my answer is, got to unplug 100%, as much as you can unplug. And and I wrote an article about that. We can talk about that later on.
We have talked to some people. I've talked to some people on different shows. We've had some people on from other shows. We're going to have people on from other shows in the future to sort of guest host while Russell is in India. And what I want to start talking to people about is this question of where do you go to recruit people into your cause? Because there are people who I very much like and respect who were overall in support of this Rage Against the War Machine rally, but who have said things to the tune of, well, there were some people there who are toxic to some people, right? And that shrunk the crowd. And the question that I have to ask for all these people is, first of all, who is toxic? But more importantly, the more important question here is, to whom are they toxic? Meaning, which audience of people are you worried about turning off, and which audience of people are you looking to turn on? As it relates to this segment here, whose audience at this point is more quote-unquote toxic to an anti-war movement? Tucker Carlson's or Rachel Maddow's? To me, it's not even a question. It's not even close.
Sure.
Because we are on the left, because we are sort of born of the Bernie movements, there is still a tendency among some people in our space, and I mean this with all due respect and love for them. That's why I want to engage them on this point, because they are reachable. I don't put these, they are not in the brainwashed lib camp. The problem is too many people in this space still feel like we can appeal to and convince the Maddow viewers to join us. And that's where they're wrong. That's where they're wrong. So what Indy, you said about they're not really mainstream, you're absolutely right. Tucker Carlson blows out Rachel Maddow in the ratings, right? Tucker's audience is way more relevant.
With Democrats.
With Democrats, even among Democrats. Tucker's audience.
Democrats watch Tucker Carlson than any MSNBC host.
Exactly. So that speaks to what I'm saying perfectly. Tucker's audience is way more mainstream than Maddow's audience. So it doesn't make sense to what's mainstream and what's not. You have to pay attention, okay, who is reachable here? Anyone who absorbs that Maddow narrative that we just sat through is not reachable anymore. They are as far gone as the Bush supporters of 2003. That's what you have to understand. There's a reluctance to understand that because they are generally, quote unquote, left-wing. But they're left-wing in a truly meaningless sense on every major issue of the day, whether it's war and peace, whether it's freedom of the press, whether it's censorship online. They are on the wrong side. They are on the wrong side. And so you have to open your mind and think, okay, who is actually toxic? What do we actually mean by toxic? Do we mean someone's toxic if they offend the sensibilities of some fucking moron MSNBC addict? You can't think that way anymore. You just can't afford to. Times have changed. You have to get with it.
Please clap.